Liz, thank you so much for the introduction. And Colin, you did an excellent job at making our job much easier because uh, Colin went through all the reasons and why do we want to move to a cloud core. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go and talk about the process of getting there. And I have excellent panelists with a lot of experience in telling us what is the best way to to go through the transition, be ready, plan for success, but also be realistic about what are the challenges and how to manage them. Because no matter what you do, change always brings a challenge. If it doesn't bring a challenge, it's not really good. And I mean, it's not really a big change. So, anyways, as I said, I have excellent panelists. I have four of them, and I have Micah Dinhart, Vice President of Engineering and Network Operations at U.S. Cellular, John Ish, Infrastructure Solutions at Orange Business, Dilip Krishna, Director of Telco Cloud Solutions and Delivery at Rakuten Symphony, and Justin Ryburn, Field Chief Technology Officer at Kentic. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through Q&A, as you do in the panel. What we're going to do is we're looking for your questions from the audience, so that's what make a panel good. And we'll take them as we go along. So don't wait until the end. We will have questions at the end as well, but if you get your questions earlier, you have more chances of us answering them. So I'll encourage you to ask your questions as we go along. Now, before we get into the Q&A, I would like to ask our panelists to introduce themselves so that you know what is that they're doing, what is their role in the transition to the cloud core. Mike, why don't we start with you?
Sure. My name is Mike Dienhart. As you mentioned, I'm the Vice President for Networks at U.S. Cellular. We're a wireless facilities-based carrier in the United States. I'm responsible with respect to cloud for developing our strategy and our implementation plans as our network migrates to a cloud-based core.
Perfect. John, how about you?
Yeah, hi, I'm John Ish. I'm with Orange Business, as you said before. I'm part of our connectivity business unit, and I have a focus on infrastructure, which goes from underlay, overlay, cloud security, those kinds of things. And I spend my days talking to our customers who are large global multinationals on what exactly they're doing in there and how Orange can help them through those transformations.
And you have a beautiful background, things going on. Dilip, how about you? Dilip, I think you're on mute.
Somebody had to be.
I'm sorry.
There
Sorry.
we go.
Yeah,
You're with
sorry
us.
about that. So, yeah,
No problem.
yeah. So, yeah, I'm Dilip Krishna. I'm a director of Telco Solutions with the Cloud Business Unit of Rakuten Symphony. We kind of help our telco customers in their cloud transformation journey through our SIM Cloud product portfolio. And I've also had experiences in the past working with cloud native packet core products and cloud native network automation products. So I'm really excited to be here to discuss this topic on cloud, something which I'm really passionate about.
Excellent. And Justin, what about you?
Yeah, Justin Ryburn, as you said, Monica, field CTO here at Kintic. Kintic is a network observability platform. So we help a lot of our customers as they're migrating workloads, specifically these core service provider workloads into the public cloud, have visibility and observability into what those network traffic patterns look like. So I spend a lot of my days talking to customers, hearing what challenges they're having, and working with our teams to improve our product to better serve those needs.
Excellent. So you guys are all looking at you're involved in different ways in the transformation to the cloud core. So let's start sort of from the beginning. We heard from Colin what is the transition to the core for BT, but maybe you can tell us why is that we have to move to the core, and maybe your perspective might be a little bit different because as a greenfield operator, things are a little bit different. But what does that mean for you, and why do we need to move to the core? Or in your case, you're not moving actually to the cloud core. You are that was
Yeah.
the way you started, right?
Yeah. So I believe this question is to me, right?
Yeah.
So we all know how the rapid growth of data, video content, and all of this is happening, and the application vendors have done an excellent job innovating at a rapid pace to meet those requirements. And this also means that the network has to be really ready to take on those demand, on that particular demand as well, right? So from a requirement perspective, what we're looking at is really a rapid feature rollout. So they're going to have continuous churn of features, or they're going to just bring in more and more features, and there's that the network has to hold up to that. There is going to be a demand for scaling, as like there'll be vertical scaling, horizontal scaling to meet the traffic requirements. Then also the geographic distribution, right? So where you may have a lot of edge use cases that may be coming in. Well, that's more from a requirement perspective. But the kind of advantages that we've seen, not just within Rakuten, but also from the standpoint of some of the other networks that we're working with, other customers that we're working in, is that the cloud is a natural fit for all these different requirements. But along with that, the additional advantages that we see is the cloud is really an infra agnostic thing, right? There's a lot of TCO savings that you're going to see. The cloud is really infra agnostic, where the customers can go and choose their own hardware. The applications, as they're moving more into a microservices architecture, moving away from the legacy three-tier architecture, we can see that there is a reduction in the overall data center footprint as well, right? I mean, you only need to grow as much as you want based on your traffic. So that's another savings that you're going to see. And the another point is the automation itself, right? One thing that we have seen is the automation is very much synonymous to the cloud. So you're going to see a lot of operational and the deployment aspects getting automated, and that again is going to help you handle a lot of the load that is coming in the future. You're going to rinse and repeat a lot of your processes. So that's another important aspect that we have seen. So net to summarize, the elasticity, the automation, and the related TCO savings are the main reasons I think one should definitely look at moving into the cloud.
Absolutely. So there's plenty of reasons to move, and I would say that in a way it's kind of an unavoidable move. The question is, how quickly do you go there? And Mike, can you tell us, how much of an urgency is there? Do we have to just stop whatever we're doing, move to the cloud, or is there more of a sort of phased process in there that you see we can go through?
Sure. Speaking as an operator, the experience of our customers is the highest priority. And so we do not view it as a burning platform that everything has to stop and move to the cloud immediately. Rather, we are moving to cloud currently, depending on the platform and the service, in a very deliberate and measured fashion, with a focus on making sure our customer experience remains robust and reliable. What I will say is the urgency comes from knowing that, Dilip, as you said, cloud allows us to speed up automation, to improve monitoring and performance management, to improve how we detect anomalies in the network experience, and it changes the cost structure of the business as well. So in a few cases, we have platforms that there are no alternatives that do not rely on some form of cloud enablement. And for those, we're moving very quickly, and others we're testing in small stages to make sure we protect the customer experience.
Excellent. And now let's go into somewhat of a different area, which is the enterprise. So for the enterprise, there are also reasons to move to the cloud core. How critical is it? Because clearly the enterprise, the role of the core in the role of the core and the role of the cloud in an enterprise, it's different. John, can you tell us a little bit
Yeah,
about that? That's your
I
specialty.
think it depends largely on the customer kind of
Mhm.
and it's not some of it is vertical based. So most of our customers have moved the majority of what they have to the cloud. And when I talk to customers, that can be, when I say majority, that can be 90% of their workloads are in the cloud today. So I would consider that sort of the high water mark. I don't think any organizations in the near term is going to get to 100%. But we have a lot of customers who have cloud first initiatives, or sort of, can we make this work in the cloud first? And if not, then somewhere else. However, we do have organizations that I work with. Financial services is an easy one to kind of segment out, who do not want their workloads operating in the cloud, and they often do not operate a cloud-based infrastructure to any great degree, other than maybe some CRM or something like that. But their main business applications do not go to the cloud. I think what has changed dramatically here is that, or maybe what has changed dramatically is where the workloads are. What has not changed as quickly, or is starting to catch up now, is how do I design a network to optimize the functionality that I'm gaining out of the cloud, right? And I see we're working with a lot of customers on, I guess, what I would call SD-WAN 1.0 transformations to SD-WAN 2.0 transformations, and really changing the way their networks operate in order to accommodate that. A big part of that is security. And I know we'll talk about security later on, so I won't say too much now, but there's a lot to just moving everything from the data center to the cloud is only the first part of the transformation. There's a lot more behind that has to happen. And I think in some cases, customers are very far ahead of that. In other cases, it's something they have to catch up on as we go forward. I think we're going to use, or I'll use the word transformation a lot over the next 45 minutes, but a lot of these things are not, flick a switch and everything's done. It's a transformation, it's a process, it's a journey. And if anything that's a journey, you have to understand, where are you now? Where do you want to go? And then map out how you get between those 2 points.
Absolutely. And because it's a journey and a transformation, there is a lot, as I said, there is a lot of different aspects that come into it. So it's not just a simple, let's move to the cloud. There's a lot of implications about it. And Justin, maybe you can tell us about all those challenges from, being involved into helping your clients doing this transition. What do you see as the main challenges in the bigger
Sure.
picture?
Yeah. I mean, I think that the details can vary from organization to organization, as I think John was just alluding to. But if I were to put them into high level buckets, I'd say they fall into cost, performance, and security. Those are the three that are kind of the summary of things. Cost, I think everybody has this bias in their head that when we migrate to the cloud, things are going to be cheaper. And for some organizations, that can be true. I mean, if you are able to shut down a data center that you're currently operating and you had huge cost for operating that data center, whether it's power, cooling, the staffing to run that, continuing investment in building out and increasing the size of that data center, there can be some cost savings. But I think what we find when we talk to customers is they're a little surprised once they move these workloads to the public cloud that they don't wind up saving as much as they thought they were going to. And there's a lot of reasons for that we maybe talk a little bit more about as we go. But cost tends to wind up being a concern for customers as they get migrated to the cloud and then want to figure out how do we optimize the cost going forward. Second one being performance. Again, is I think some of the panelists have already alluded, when you migrate an application or a workload to the public cloud, you have to do it in such a way, you have to plan it out in such a way that all the pieces of that application migrate together. Otherwise, you're going to have high latency. You're going to have problems with the connectivity in between them, and that's going to cause performance problems for those applications. So it has to be well thought out. It has to be well planned so that the applications perform the way that you want them to when they're migrated to the public cloud. And then the third aspect there was security. I think there are ways to secure applications running in the public cloud, and all the public cloud providers have some best practices that they have published on how to do that. But it's very different than the way it was done when you had these workloads running in your own data center, right? The notion of a security perimeter that your firewall secures for you doesn't really exist in the public cloud. That's not the way they secure workloads in the public cloud. So you have to make sure that you re-architect things such that the security posture that you had when those workloads are running in the data center is maintained in the public cloud, and have some way to validate that, right? And that's where we see a lot of our customers looking for solutions is, okay, I think I know what my security posture is and what's being enforced, but I need some way to double check so that I'm not exposed.
Justin, I just had a question for you. I think that we're getting to the point where cloud is being done in a deliberate manner. The entire multi-cloud environment is starting to become more deliberate. But I think there was a long time where cloud was kind of haphazard and done not with a central IT kind of focus of like you'd have in the data center, right, where everything is done in a very specific way. And do you think that's true that we're getting to the point where things are that deterministic way in which you would deploy cloud is becoming more the norm rather than that kind of haphazard way of the past?
Yeah, definitely. For a long time, there was the concept of shadow IT, right? Where there were departments within the organization who spun up cloud infrastructure using a credit card, and probably didn't follow the proper IT guidelines that the organization had. I do think that now that the organizations are becoming more open and seeing the value of migrating stuff to public cloud, that those migrations are a little better thought out.
Absolutely.
There's probably still some amount of work that has to be done to clean up some of the shadow IT to get a handle on what is out there. How do we make sure it's following our best practices and the way we want to architect these things? The other thing to the multi-cloud that we see a lot is organizations who don't intentionally have a multi-cloud strategy, right? Like they may say, hey, we're all in on, I'm just going to pick one, say Google Cloud, right? And either they acquire another organization who was all in on Microsoft Azure. And so now they have, two clouds they have to support for some period of time through acquisition. Or, they had a shadow IT where Google was their approved cloud provider, but they had certain parts of the organization who just found it easier to spin up Azure because Microsoft gave them some free resources with their O365 spend or whatever it may be, right? So they have both in their environment, whether they intend to or want to or not.
I've also seen customers make decisions on software as a service and infrastructure as a service in different directions, but then things get cloudy, if you can apologize for the pun. But, things start to get a little bit cloudy in between there and what is which. And, did we, so anyway, I've seen that multi-cloud go that way too, where I have different and they start to bleed over into each other. But anyway.
For sure.
Yeah, no, and it's an interesting set of considerations, and especially in telecoms and wireless, where we're sort of adopting an IT model which started not within telecom. So we're kind of in a way late to the game, but that also gives us the opportunity to learn from what happened in other sectors. So now, let me, we're going to go to security because I can see there is an interest from the audience as well on that. But before we do that, maybe Dilip, you can tell us how to get ready to succeed. Do you have a tip? Like, what is the most important thing that you can do in order to make sure that the transition, complex as it is going to take you where you want to go? Is there?
Sure, absolutely. Right. So, so there are several steps that organizations can take in order to have this smooth transition into the cloud, right? But according to me, the number one in that list would be a precise planning. I think some of the gentlemen here spoke about that too, right? The first and the foremost in that would be the choice of the right cloud platform, right? And this largely depends on the use cases itself. Now, for example, if you're looking at the core data centers for telcos, right, the requirement would be around horizontal scale. There could be networking related requirements, specifically like we may have to support multiple different CNIs for packet core applications. There could be a demand for effective storage management through cloud native storage solutions. And also maybe for features such as backup and restore of the applications, specifically for those in the BSS and the OSS arena, right? So there may be a lot of those requirements. Now, those could be from a core data center perspective. But as we move to the edge, due to the sheer scale of the edge network, you'll need a platform which is very lean, right? And it does not eat into the resources of the applications, right? Because you have the network base is going to be so big that you may not be able to, allocate a lot of resources to your platform itself. So you need that the lean nature of the platform, right? There may be scenarios where, we ourselves have seen that there may be scenarios where just a single node deployment with a hyperconvergence is going to be the requirement, right? So the lean is the word basically when it comes to the edge. Now, if you see, there are multiple requirements already from a cloud perspective itself. Now, the second point that we have to look at is how are you going to use automation. Right now, already the cloud, the topic itself says that you may have actually moved some of your smaller applications into the cloud. How do you now deal with the critical ones? And you may have had some learnings as part of your smaller applications, right? And you may have created some set of procedures already. Right? You take those learnings, takes the extra steps that you've created, and then you create a mop out of it. I mean, usually there's all the work that you've done translates into a method of procedure. So you take that mop out of it and then put it into an automation framework. Now, that is where the choice of an automation framework also becomes important, because because the use cases are going to be very dynamic. You cannot be waiting for the product change to happen, which may take from 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is, right? So you may want a platform which is very flexible, where you can just go and write your scripts, bring up your automation, and just try and finish off the work. Now, this automation itself could be from the bare metal. It could be about app lifecycle management. It could be about building the clusters, and any other use cases, right? So these are some of the things that we have seen that we have done ourselves also, which have kind of where we have gone ahead and succeeded not only within Rakuten but also with some of the other customers that Rakuten Symphony is working with, right? So these are some of the steps that I think are very, very important for the organizations to follow to kind of succeed in their cloud transition journey.
Hey, before we move on real quick, you said
Mike,
something
go
that
ahead.
I want to underline a point that you said, because I think it's really important from an operator perspective. The maturity of the automation framework has to move in tandem with the cloud, with the migration to cloud. Cloud by itself just adds complexity because nothing else comes out of the network. You just add cloud on top of it. And without automation moving at the same pace, which is sometimes just as complex to enable within an organization, the costs are actually higher with cloud because of the people you're throwing at the problem to manage it. So you said that, and I think it's a really a point well made.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
I think,
yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was agreeing with the same point, right? That basically, as you learn, because the cloud is going to be dynamic, your use cases are going to be dynamic, and as you learn more and more from it, you try and close that loop through the automation, so that the next set of use cases become a lot more easier. Right? So that's something that we have experienced ourselves. Go ahead. Yeah,
and I think automation, that's it's an easy word to say, like, automation is going to make, it's I think there's a question about AI later, and I think there's a very similar, AI is going to solve everything, automation is going to solve everything, but there's a lot that goes into automation, right? That's not push a button and everything happens. You have to develop the automation for yourselves. And from a customer perspective, that means different resources than I probably have on staff today, right? I'm bringing essentially programming resources in potentially, and I have to not only bring in those resources, or train my existing resources in programming, which is probably a very hard thing to do. I was talking to a customer 2 weeks ago who said that exact thing. It's really hard to take a network guy and make him a programmer. It's just not. It's a new skill set. So, but anyway, it's just a resource thing. I think you can't. It's easy to say automation, and that just kind of flows out like it solves every problem, but there's a lot that goes into automation to make it do what you want it to do, and maybe that sounds simple, but I think it's a bigger ask than a lot of, when I talk to customers just starting out on this journey, not recognizing how difficult it can be to find those people and keep them,
Yeah, and actually, if I might add, another thing is at the same time, moving to the cloud might give you the opportunity to introduce automation in a way that you wouldn't otherwise. So it sort of works both ways, because if you have to automate the existing core, it might be kind of a waste. So you just do the whole thing together. So it's a way to push you towards being a little bit more aggressive on the automation side. So Mike, do you see that to be like that pushes you to do automation to do? So is the transition to the cloud going to push you to innovate more than you would otherwise?
I think both
Because if you have to do it, might as well do it well.
Yeah, both automation and cloud move in separate swim lanes today. The challenge is they've got to be linked. One automation enables cloud, and cloud by definition enables faster paths to automate. And so they have to move in tandem. We're working both. A lot of it comes down to associate development and training. And I'm a strong advocate. I know we talked for a minute about organizing the cloud migration very carefully and through a strong planning framework. And I agree with that. I agree with the centralization of planning for cloud migration, but I would advocate for the decentralization of training and development and cultural engagement and change management, all the things that underpin migrating to the cloud. So automation is one of that. We've decentralized our automation training. We don't have one group that does automation. We have dozens of people that we've trained in automation embedded within each work group, because that's the only way to make it work and make it grow fast enough.
Yes, and you mentioned culture, which is an important topic. I hope we get there later, but let me get to the first question we have from the audience. And I'm reading it to you. It's my concerns are security and performance for the 5G core, the routing into and out of the cloud without latencies. How is that benchmark? And 5G is all about throughput, minimal QoS-based latency, and how is that going to be impacted, I guess, by the core? So there are two questions here. So the first one is about security. And Justin, maybe you can tell us a little bit about how do we make sure that as we move to the core, we do not compromise security?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of logging tools. There are a lot of approaches that the cloud providers give you to be able to see what your traffic looks like, what's being accessed, all those type of things. So just like you would in an on-prem, mobile serving center or an on-prem data center, you've got to keep an eye on those things and make sure that you don't have breaches, that you don't have traffic that shouldn't be, or applications shouldn't be being accessed, or traffic that shouldn't be there. They're just a little bit different in what you're looking at, but the types of things that you're trying to find really don't change that much. It's just a matter of making sure you're keeping an eye on those things and looking for those anomalies.
Yeah. John, do you want to add is there any specific, I guess the enterprise might have some additional concerns in terms of security.
Yeah, in fact, I think that there's probably two different things that go on with global multinationals. When you look at cloud security, there's the optimal way to do cloud security, and then there's the way we've always done security in the past. And those two things have to come together in order to get to where you want. And, look, I don't think anybody who's trying to sell security to a large multinational and walks in and says, you're doing security wrong and here's the way you're going to do it. That's the end of that sales call, right? That's not the way large global multinationals are going to make decisions about security. So I think the challenge is that a lot of times when we see large global multinationals make decisions about cloud, security lags behind, and we end up in scenarios where we do have, whether it's I saw on the BT presentation earlier, a CNF, a carrier neutral facility, or a multi-cloud security platform or something like that, it still becomes a choke point for cloud traffic. Is it optimal? Probably no, it's not optimal. Is it the best way that we can deploy for a customer who has those requirements? Then probably, right? So we have to exist somewhere between the two. We can educate about the optimal way to do it, how these things are going to become efficient, but we have to operate within the customer security platform or security requirements as they exist today. So number one, anytime I'm talking to a customer about SD-WAN or cloud transformation, I want security in the room. And I think that's a mistake that's made sometimes in those kinds of can be problems in those conversations, is security is left out of the room. And then what happens is, whatever discussions you had become absolutely moot down the road when security comes in and says, oh, no, we can't do it that way. So it's really important that security is in the room, but we have to learn to work with them and say, how do we work together to come to the best solution for everybody in the environment? That's, I'm working on an RFP right now where the customer said, this is what we need for security today, which is largely replicating a data center-based security platform that they have in place today, because that's the easy button, right? But they want to make sure that anything we deploy has the capability to do more advanced cloud-based security in the future. And you can see in their minds, right, what the RFP is doing is setting the stage for a transformation in security from where I am today to where I want to be tomorrow. But not all companies can instantly flip that switch to say, okay, that we're going to go to a new security paradigm. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, so I guess it's so I guess that's one of the tips for the transition. Keeps security involved from day one, from the RFP process, and not just at the
Absolutely.
at the
And I
end.
think we moved in, not to interrupt, but I think with SASE, the whole idea around SASE is kind of bring security into your SD-WAN transformation, but it also applies to cloud 100%,
Absolutely. And Mike, maybe you can comment on the performance part of the question as we go to the 5G core. Is that going to limit the kind of performance that you'd have in, improvement in performance you have in the RAN? Because is the cloud slowing down everything else, basically?
Yeah, generally speaking, no. In part because it's a directive, right? The cloud migration cannot impact the customer experience on the RAN, and as the audience member noted, that experience level is a critical threshold for successful retention of customers. And so the way we manage that, very practically speaking, is the most sensitive network elements, the IMS core, SA core, those types of network elements. We maintain in a cloud environment on premise. And so it's the first little baby step into cloud. They're certainly cloud enabled. They're in cloud environments, but they're on prem. And so we manage the performance, we manage the latency, we manage the security in our own data centers. All those things we've managed by taking the question mark of external latency, external performance, external security out of the equation. We will use some applications that go to either private cloud, off-prem, or public cloud. We're doing some of that today, but they're the least sensitive to the customer experience.
Absolutely. So no compromise. Anyway, anything else you'd like to comment? Dilip, would you comment on this?
Sure. So I think everybody's been talking more or less from an application perspective, but from an infrastructure perspective, from a cloud perspective, what we kind of make sure is, because the cloud is not just cloud alone, right? It's not the cloud layer alone. There's going to be an operating system below it, then there's going to be the hardware below it, etc. So for us, it's the whole stack that have to be secured. So I mean, before the applications come on board on the cloud. So what we kind of try and do is we try to stick to all the CIS benchmarks, right, from the operating system perspective, followed by that on the cloud. From a Kubernetes perspective, we try and make sure that we are always hardened on every front. And also there are other platform capabilities, right, like the service mesh and all that. That's something that we bring along, so that we offer all those capabilities to the applications, so that they do not have any kind of concerns when it comes to security. That's just my 2 cents from an infra perspective.
Absolutely. Now, we talked about automation and how this is crucial as we move to the cloud. How important is AI in driving this automation? And maybe you can comment a little bit more specific about what, automation seems like it's a good thing no matter what, right? But can you be a little bit more specific about what kind of automation, how is that going to help, and how is AI going to drive that? Who wants to take that?
I can
happy to start.
And go ahead, Justin. Go ahead, Justin. Yeah. Oh, you go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think. Sure. I think AI is definitely an interesting topic. There's a lot of buzz in the industry about it. I think there's definitely we're starting to see where there are some areas where it might be able to be applied now. There's some interesting use cases that are now starting to take form, but I do think it's still very early days. I think we're going to see over the next, I don't know, call it 5 to 10 years, a lot of really interesting places where things that were very time consuming, very manual, even if you quote unquote automated them, it was time consuming to figure out the answers, right? Like large volumes of data around security and performance, these things we've just been talking about, right? We've had logs, we've had metrics for years and years, but why do we still have data breaches? Why do we still have performance problems with applications? Well, it's because how do I know which metrics matter, right? What should I be paying attention to? There's a volume, any knock or SOC is inundated with alerts of one form or another, right? And how do they figure out which ones they need to take action on, which ones they don't? I think this is really an interesting area where theoretically AI and applying some machine learning to be able to separate seeing trends of multiple metrics changing at one time, or being able to program a neural net to say, hey, the last time I saw these particular things, that was an outage, or that was a security incident, versus these other type of patterns were not, and be able to train a neural net that can then in the future surface the right things and separate some of that signal from the noise. I think those are the kinds of things that are going to be really compelling as as we go forward as an industry. But again, I still think it's really early days in some of this stuff.
So
Yeah.
Justin said pretty much what I was going to say, except the only thing I'd add to that, I think, is that when you look at the individual vendors within either AI or automation, right, the SD-WAN vendor will bring automation on their scale. They'll bring some level of AI on their scale. The trick, I think, is to get to the point where it's enterprise-wide, and using all the data that Justin was just talking about, that not only comes from my SD-WAN, but also from my security logs or from my cloud instance, and using all that data at once to make decisions. And then the last thing is the training. Justin mentioned that that's another easy word that everybody can say, oh yeah, we'll just train the AI. But that step can be onerous, and it gets way more onerous when you talk about multiple vendor environments with huge amounts of data. Training is, don't look on that lightly. That's a big thing to do, to be able to train on practically anything, But I do think from an incident management perspective, from a security management perspective, that's where you're going to see the biggest and best gains from AI, because there is a lot of data, and if I can parse all that data, I can do good things with it. So I think those are two good places.
Well, and connecting that back to the topic we're talking about here, I think that's where cloud can become really interesting, right? Is because we are dealing with large volumes of data to be able to train those models, right? And that's a perfect use case, I think, for the cloud, where you have elastic resources, right? If I have this large volume of data that I've got to crunch and I've got to figure out how to train this model, being able to have elastic compute like you have in the public cloud is a perfect place to put those type of workloads.
I didn't think of it that way, but that's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess that at the same time, because you have a sort of more complex environment, more players involved, as you say, that's going to, increase, the increase in complexity is going to make it a little bit harder to go and do the, work through the AI-driven automation. It's easier to automate if it's one player. But as you go for virtualization, cloudification, that obviously makes it a little bit harder. I wonder whether we can comment a little bit about the business case. Because, John, you mentioned the fact that, clearly everybody wants to cut costs, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get cost savings from day one. And Mike talked about all the cultural changes, and when you have a cultural change, you have to train people, you have to do things differently, and that it might save you costs in the long term, but in the short term you might actually see an increase in cost because you have to go through those changes. So how do we deal with that, in the fact that you might not have a short-term cost savings, or how do we think about the cost savings through time? And maybe, Mike, do you want to get started on that? And
Yeah, I can start the conversation. I'm sure we all have a perspective. I think the question of business case is a very broad question, and I'd split it up into a couple that I think are very important from an operator perspective. First is the determination of which implementation of cloud makes the most sense from experience, from customer, from technology path, and from economics, right? Does it make sense for the operator to own and manage cloud, or use a hyperscaler who's got a scale efficiencies? I also think that from a network function perspective, it would be incorrect to treat each network function the same. I think cloud, especially public cloud, has a sweet spot for some network functions, while for others it doesn't make sense. It's maybe a constant run rate of compute where you get a better scale efficiency from just owning those resources and running them at full speed all the time, instead of renting that from a hyperscaler. I do think that there are certainly positive opportunities from cloud. We've talked about some of them already on the OpEx side. I think that there's a potential transformation, a step change in capital investments from not investing in as much purpose-built hardware in the core of the network that we have in the past. And then finally, we haven't talked much about it, but I'm sure John sees this as well, as on the revenue side, enabling cloud enables us to go faster in developing new use cases, rolling them out, testing them, adjusting them, delivering slices for customers, all those things that perhaps deliver on the promise of 5G or other technologies enabled by the cloud. We go faster at delivering them and realizing them at lower risk.
Absolutely. Can you tell us what use cases do you see as the main ones?
Yeah, the earliest ones for us are our network core. So, for example, if anybody's familiar with SA core as a technology that requires cloud enablement, I don't think it can be done without cloud. And so that's the first one. And we haven't yet seen the economics or the business case from it yet. It's primarily a technology path execution. But I do think that as we migrate customers and we gain the benefits of the advanced features of that network core, then the benefits are definitely going to materialize.
Absolutely. Any other comments on the cost?
Well, I think that the variability of costs can be problematic at times for some of our customers who have viewed those costs as a fixed cost in the past, and now I've got variability. And I think the elasticity is fantastic for getting what you want, but it also can create huge problems in budgets when when we talk to our customers. If there's events that cause dramatic requirements, then they can end up in a very bad spot from a financial perspective. But I think over time, it's really the focus should be on end user experience and how well are you performing. But I know cost is always there, right? It's always part of the conversation, without a doubt.
Yeah, the other
Yeah.
thing that we see a lot with customers is the cost shifts from a CapEx model to an OpEx
Yeah.
model too, right? So I think that's
Huge.
kind of what John was alluding to. If you're buying new servers and scaling up a data center, you spend that money once, let's call it. That's not technically true because you have to refresh that hardware, but you add the capacity and you spend the CapEx dollars and you can depreciate that over time. Whereas with the cloud, it's an OpEx model, right? And your monthly recurring cost goes up as your scale goes up and the bills get bigger and bigger. So from a financial reporting perspective, it's a shift in mindset as well from a capex and depreciation over to an opex, which is sometimes hard for a lot of larger organizations, whether they're service providers or enterprises, to turn that corner. It's just not the way they're used
And
to
I think that
doing their budgeting.
right. There's solutions out there to resolve those problems with there's a lot of cloud FinOps kind of scenarios where you can go in and assess where you are, what you're doing, and if there is a more cost-effective way. And we find that's an excellent way to start a conversation with a customer is let us look at your environment and help you with, is it optimized from a cost perspective? Because as I said before, I think end user experience is trumps all, but if we can come in and say nothing's going to change about your end user experience, but because of the way you're consuming cloud, you're spending too much money, we can help you with that. And I think that's a good entry point into a conversation around cloud, is to optimize that cost.
Absolutely. And
Yeah,
to
so I
think
think
about it, it's like OPEX or CapEx, and is it tied to traffic or tied to whatever your network is doing? Use cases. It's also very, it's a, it's again, it's another change that we're seeing, not just in the core. I think
Yeah.
somebody
Well,
else
it's a
was.
good point. I was going to say it's a good point that if I'm paying more but I'm getting more, then I'm okay with it, right? And I think there's other reporting you can do across cloud environments to prove that one way or another. But yep.
Yeah,
I think I was just
absolutely.
trying to mention the fact that, I would totally agree with John on that point, right? That you need to know your current status very well, and then plan accordingly, right? I mean, I was trying to answer the same question earlier, like based on your use cases, how you would choose, and that's very, very important initially to get to know that, like what you need, how do you see your network in next maybe X number of years, and then if you're able to anticipate that and plan accordingly, it's going to help you really a lot in terms of savings, right? So that's on one point that I want to add. I think I definitely agree with John on that.
Now we don't have much time left, but I wanted to go back to the culture. And Mike, maybe you can tell us, how do you see, moving to the cloud? it's not just a technology change; it's also a cultural change. How is that? How do you prepare for it, and how big of an issue is that?
Yeah, broadly, people are pretty excited by the migration to cloud. Engineers get excited about new stuff. And so it's not hard to convince people to learn and get up to speed and train and engage in cloud. Where people start to get anxious, and this is what requires, I think, leadership, plain and simple, is when they worry that they're going to lose control or agency over their future, right? When they worry that some aspect of cloud transformation will put their job at risk, or they worry that they can't get up to speed and they want to stay focused on what they've been doing for 20 or 30 years. I think Justin made the point, I think it was Justin, that it's hard to turn network engineers into programmers. I do give a lot of credit for our team in terms of learning cloud technologies and being prepared to enable them. And so what we have to do as leaders is just make the path clear.
That's a good point.
Absolutely. Yeah. So go ahead.
I was saying, just agreeing. This is a really good point. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that this is oftentimes we don't think about this kind of implications, which is good, good and bad. It's like it's mixed, which is important. We are at the end of our panel, unfortunately, because there'll be so many more topics to talk about. But thank you all, you for sharing your thoughts, and all of you in the audience for listening to us and asking questions. Thank you very much.